All right. So we have a full house so far. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Manny Tejeda from Foto. We've had a great session, many recurring bite-sized video learning sessions with different vendors, and this is one I've been very excited for. So please keep in mind there are some house rules. Please ask all questions in the Q&A portal so that either myself or the awesome crew at Tether Tools can answer during the presentation, or Rich can answer live once he is done. We'll be using the chat function for sending links and relevant information. Today, we are blessed to have Josh Simmons from Tether Tools and Liz Betcher. They will be helping with us, okay? All right, so Foto and Tether Tools are truly partners in satisfying the professional photographer's needs. Between our staff experience with on-set and off-set troubleshooting and Tether Tools' constant product innovation, you both have ends of your workflow covered. Speaking of workflow, we have none other than Rich Myers, aka DigiRichie, leading the charge in upgrading your workflow with battle-tested solutions. Rich Myers is a digital tech from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is the definition of on-location digitech. He has had to provide his services in the most remote of locations. From hospitals to the backwoods, Rich has figured out solutions for even the most difficult solutions in situations. Without further ado, here's Rich Myers.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me, Manny. Tether Tools, Foto. Thanks for hosting. I'm super excited. This is gonna be rad. Let's jump right into it. So right now you should see the title card, right? We're gonna talk today about all kinds of location solutions, starting off with power management. The most essential of all things. You can't tether a computer or camera that you have no power for, right? So let's get into it. Let's chat about the different options we have. Right off the bat, you have some really cool options Tether Tools is bringing to the table right now to take just about anything you can get on any production set and convert it to a USB-C power source or anything to power camera, computer, charge a battery, just about anything you need. What we have, you got the DTAP battery that you can plug just a USB-C brick right into. And that's going to power you for 2-3 hours on a heavy tethered session. You carry a couple of these, either that, or you can convert it even into household adapters. So they have a DC adapter that you can plug right into a DTAP battery, and automatically you have 2 household adapters. So you don't have to worry about cables or anything like that. You can use anything you want. Moving forward from that, let me see if I can get out of screen share here. Hey, there you guys are. What you missed was this guy. This guy is the epicenter of a lot of the options we have now. There's a ton of brands that make the V-Lock, the Gold Lock, Anton Bauer batteries. What these batteries are doing now is they're showing up on a lot more sets and more accessibility to give you options of powering just about anything like we just talked about. Simply with a lot of the aftermarket stuff we have now, you can turn anything into just a household adapter. You charge your laptop, charge your camera batteries, you can run your laptop on for a Zoom session per se. I mean, right now, my entire rig is, except for the monitor, I'm gonna be honest, the monitor's plugged into a wall, my camera, my Atomus, everything's battery. I have a screen in front of me showing me everything that's back here, floating with one single power cord going to the monitor. And it's really important to do stuff like that and to have that option so you don't rely on house power. I've been on jobs where, my rig is set up and I have iMacs on carts and monitors, and somebody gets a little ambitious and doop, they pull the power. Now, personally, I run a battery backup on all my systems, except the laptop, obviously, just in case you lose power, you have to make a move. But not all days your batteries are going to be fully charged. Having stuff like this always at your disposal means we lose power. Okay, even if we only have 15 minutes just to wrap drives or anything, that's more than nothing. So just being overly prepared and just having tools that you can use for multiple things, not just to power a computer. Say my keyboard dies. What do I do with my keyboard when it dies? Well, I plug it into a USB port. Something like this, well, I got 4 USB ports right there. Now I have a convenience of charging it, in my car, on my way to a job, on my way home from a job. Being prepared and showing up with everything ready is one thing, but having the solutions premeditated is kind of where I come into play. This digital tech, and just to give you a little basis for some of us that don't fully know what it is, we're kind of like the film lab now. Back in the day, we'd load it back, film back. I was a medium format guy, so you give me a Hassi back, I load a 120, I give it back to the photographer, they pull dark slides on the back, boom, 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 pop, pop, pop. You give it back to us. I'll slow down. Okay. I'll give it back to us. And, you know, you have 12 shots taken. They go off to somebody else. And then a couple of days later, unless you had a E6 or C41 process or you shot black and white, you had to wait for your film to come back or, you know, your clip test or whatever. Now that's me. We shoot tethered, so we don't have to worry about these things. How many times, you know, in the past, film got lost, film got fogged, film got destroyed. It was a bad roll before you even shot it. If you didn't clip test it, how do you know the film's going to expose properly? You know, in the original film days, you shot, you know, when we shot chrome, we would shoot, you know, one card a third over and one a third under, just to be sure. It's, you know, just like we bracket now, that's not for HDR. That's more for, okay, did we get our highlights? Did we get our shadows? With a chrome, it was a positive. You couldn't slide a, you know, let me just add a couple points of shadow and a little clarity. Is what you see is what you get. We shot, we took a photo, and it was done. That was it. That's why tethering to me is so important, because now our photographers and our clients and everything, we're back on that page where we're all collaborating, but we're collaborating in an instant method. And it gives you the ability to really push the envelope and really achieve more things than you normally could have.
Hey, Rich, like, if someone who's been on set, it feels like clients are getting more and more impatient
Yeah.
with seeing the results. How has tethering helped you?
It's helped me because in so many ways of just being able to present options. Hey, you know, we really like this. Well, let's give you 3 options of lighting, or let's give you 3 different set backgrounds, or for prop styling. It is humongous for prop styling. I've worked on IKEA catalogs where we build, if you open those books, we build all them. You know, you'd spend days, and, you know, in the film days, you couldn't really, you know, you'd rip a Polaroid or 2, but you didn't have too much. For this kind of, for now, we can take a picture and go, okay, I don't like that book there, let's turn around. We don't have to worry about retouching the text off a book for copyright purposes. It's enhanced so many different areas of photography for us, and it's made photography more accessible for people. It's given so many people the ability to produce images that they never even knew were possible in the moment. Because, you know, when you're out shooting, you're shooting a card, you go, oh, it looks good, looks good. You get home, you go, oh man, I really, you know, I missed focus on this one, or this, that. And you're spending a lot of time looking at the monitor, you know, looking at these, you know.
Yeah, you're no longer just shooting for catalog, for print. You're shooting for social media, for different platforms.
Right. The asks, you know, back in the day, you know, when I started in the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, when we'd go do these big pharmaceutical jobs, and you did a shot. There was one, that was it. You made a photo a day if you were lucky, you know. Now those same jobs, we don't just have that one key art image with a couple of supporting gallery images. We have 15 key art images, 60 gallery images, 2 libraries to hit, a social media team driving us nuts, running around behind us, tripping over cables. You know, the things have really progressed, and you know, companies like Tether Tools and you know, they've done a lot to help us with this, because nobody else really took the forefront or the step to make, you know, to take the headway to develop the products. You know, like the Air Direct. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that is, to me, that's the future. You know, especially with everything that, you know, we've been going through, having hands-free completely.
Yeah.
It's, you know, when we get it, we'll talk about that later, but, you know, getting to a safer place. And that's one thing tethering really is it has helped too, is now that we can't all be together at all times, we can still be together at all times with tethering. I can shoot something right here, right now, and my friends in London could have it on their screen instantly. I could be controlling a photographer's camera who's in, you know, Canada, and sending the clients in, you know, Pakistan, wherever you want, you know, just to show the scale.
And now with these uncertain times, you're going to be doing that more often than not. We'll be outside the studio in a car parked, teching from there while the shoot's inside the warehouse or the studio.
And that's actually something I have a studio right now that, you know, it's one of the guys I've worked for about 15 years. I have a 5 DSR sitting there with an Air Direct on it at all times. We do a lot of composition assets for advertising where I'll just run up, he'll shoot, and I sit outside. I don't even go in the studio. I can sit there, I can manage his files. I have, you know, there's an HDMI cable that comes through, goes right to a monitor, so he sees what's going on. You know, but he was a film shooter. So when he's one of those guys that he looks at something, he might take 30 minutes to light everything with 20 heads. One frame goes, all right, I'm off half a stop. Second frame, we're done. You know, there's still that school out there, and I love both schools. I love the film shooter, but I really love the composition stuff. When we were doing Breaking Bad, man, we would shoot 70 frames for a group shot. If you ever saw season 4, we did with Polo Loco, the big semi truck in the background. You got Walt over here, and Jesse. One of the coolest shoots I've ever been on. I loved it. And not just that, I got the light test color card every one of their positions. So I actually have a poster of me in every one.
Oh, nice.
That was back in the assisting days, dude. But yeah, having the ability to shoot 13 different people and put them in the same shot. But there's ways of doing it properly. We actually did it like they're all there once. You mark the camera, you mark everything. You don't move anything. Walt will come here. Jesse would come here. Skylar would go there, and you pop, and then the tech, we're actually there. Whoever's teching at the time would be comping it. And now, we make cinemagraphs live now. That kind of stuff. Tethering has given us that ability that if somebody says, "Hey, what's this look like?" There it is. What's it look like in black and white? Boom, it's black and white. There's no more, when you went color to black and white with film, it didn't always work out too good, especially if you didn't have a nice contrasty negative. Now, it goes both ways almost with the right kind of tweaking and skill
let's
set.
go over different options.
Yeah. So for tethering, we always have the classic, the bulletproof, most efficient thing in the world, the cable. I love cables. And you can see I keep my cables built. This one is for a Canon 5DSR. It has their built-in jerk stopper permanently linked on it. I have a set of these. That way, if one breaks, I pull another one out. We unscrew, we screw back in. One of the biggest things, that I found to be successful for my personal workflow, I use iMacs or I use laptops. But if I use a laptop, I use it with a powerful hub, like a GILF hub or the Cal Digit, that always gives me USB 3 standard.
Yes.
Because of the tether boost. This isn't just, this isn't like hey, go out and buy one of these. These are the greatest things ever. I've made a living because of this thing. This keeps the stability for all my cameras insane. It really has changed my abilities. And as far as length goes, we're not scared anymore. 15 feet's great, but when you go down 2 feet from your cart, you got 8 feet across the floor, and then you got 5 feet to your camera. If photographer wants to move over a foot, now you got to move the cart, you got to move the cable, you got, safety becomes a concern. 30 feet, we're always ready to go.
In case anyone's wondering why an iMac versus a MacBook Pro, USB tethering, different power draws. USB 3.0, not the most stable because it's only meant to go about 15 feet easily, if that. You need a power boost just to drive enough power to get the other end going. And every camera has a different power draw. And your camera is actually draining some battery from you, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the nicer things, that's where you get into that power issue where when, you get that hiccup, that's not a camera or anything. It's, you're taking a camera that's not really supposed to be tethered. Canon, Nikon, they don't put too much time into tethering. They're just like, okay, we're going to make sure it writes the card perfectly every time. If it tethers, okay. Well, somebody else will figure it out. And that's where Tether Tools comes in. And the other brands out there that figured it out. And they said, okay, how do we make it better? How do we improve the efficiency? How do we make it, back in the day, Manny, I'm sure you can speak to this. I'm just going to say P40. Come on. That was a nightmare. There's only one thing worse than that, and that was the DCS 14N. One of my favorite cameras of all time because it felt like a marshmallow in your hand.
Yeah.
But tethering, it was a SCSI cable. Oh my God, SCSI, the worst. Second worst, Firewire 400. That thing would just fall out. And then you had to get that Sonnet adapter, 400 to 800. If you lost it, oh my God, they were like $200. There was no Amazon. B&H had one or two in stock if they even shipped that day. So, but coming forward, now we're into USB and we're going from, capture times being 1.1 second, 2 seconds for a file to, I can have a 5DSR and you can just hold the shutter down.
Yeah, almost
into my iMac Pro. I'm under 2 seconds from capture to render on a 30-foot throw. And you've gotten rid of all buffer issues. With the 5D2, you get 12 frames and you get that little spinny wheel in Lightroom. Those days are gone. Now we can, I've sat there with the 1DX Mark III and just went and just ran through it. And okay, please stop tethering.
As long as your hard drive can handle it.
Yeah, well, SSDs, no spinnies, no spins, no bearings. I spent a lot of time with a photographer, and we did 10 NFL cheerleader swimsuit calendars. We traveled to Dominican Republic, Mexico, all over the Caribbean, and it was chaos. We shot tethered 99% of the time. And you're going back, I mean, this is 2020 now. I'm talking about 2010, 2009, 2011.
How
We're
time
shooting
flies.
13-inch MacBook Pro. I know, right? 13-inch MacBook Pros, that were this thick, had a CD drive that you took out and you put your data doubler in. But power was the hugest issue. We would carry these massive battery packs with us. And I actually I wish I would pull it out. Custom-made Pelicans that are waterproof for the battery packs with cable routers to come out. And eventually, when the first Tether Boost came out, I actually created a Pelican for that. I'm actually seeing if it's there. That I put a 15-foot tether cable into and a 15-foot tether cable out of. And the original Tether Boost was in there with a battery pack. And the photographer would go out in the ocean. I'd have the laptop right in the surf, and you see the Pelican just floating.
Yeah.
And Dom would be out there, and there'd be a cheerleader doing, mohawks in the water. And you're shooting a 1DX Mark II.
Wow.
Full high-speed burst, tethered in the Dominican. It's 100 degrees, at noon.
So in case anyone doesn't realize that, when you're a professional digitech, you have to figure out a solution no matter what the problem is. No matter how chaotic the situation is, you better figure it out.
Yeah, there's really, unfortunately, no time for, there is time. There's always time. But really if you want to come back tomorrow.
I had a really good question from Brian Eves, from speaking of battery, on Tether Tools DTAP battery, the 150 watt hour on a 15-inch MacBook Pro. How long is the runtime?
So it's such a, there's obviously there's going to be this X amount is the target. It really, I'd say I personally, I feel like I've gotten about 2.5 hours on a normal session on them. Now, you got to think about what you're doing on the battery. If you're sitting there, you're just, you're doing Zoom, your battery's going to last a lot longer.
Yeah.
One of the best things I can tell anybody, and this, I got a tribute to one of my best friends in the world, Sean. He figured this out years ago. When you show up with a laptop, if your laptop's at 100% and you plug it into a power source and then you open it, your laptop thinks it's always plugged into a power source. It never throttles any power to any parts of the computer because it's got a continuous flow of water coming in to keep it wet. The minute you lose, say your external battery dies, the minute your laptop goes into charging mode, now it's throttling things to conserve power. It's throttling things to keep heat down because it's now charging and the batteries get super hot. So one of the greatest things you can do, show up with 100% battery and you're always going to be good. Max raised his hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Back to the question. But yeah, the major thing you want to do is you want to be concerned about what you're actually doing with the battery. If the compute, say you're on a 15-inch 2016 MacBook Pro USB-C with the touch bar, right? That's going to eat more battery than a 2017 because the dynamics of the touch bar. Now, if you go to a 2019 16-inch, you change everything. Every computer is going to perform different. What I always tell people and what I do personally, I beat the crap out of stuff days before it ever even makes it on set. I find out where the failure is. Find out where the failure is because then you always know what you're always ready. When tethering drops, my biggest thing, that one of the reasons I use a Tether Boost, if tethering drops, I unplug the Tether Boost, I plug it back in. That's my first step. 95% of the times it fixes my problems. And then you go through your list. Same with power. If you can keep that computer at 100, something like this is going to save the day. And what I would recommend, and this is with any battery, keep an eye on it. If you see your battery, your computer battery, your computer battery is 100 and you've been going for 2 hours, check your battery. If you're down to 1 bar, switch it out and put this on a charger. Don't charge your batteries up from 0. Charge your batteries up for 20, 30, 40. Cut down the time you're spending and worrying about things. There's nothing worse than having 2 batteries. You blow the first one, you get halfway through the day on the second one, and that one's done. And the first one's only at 20% because you didn't manage your power properly. It's all about thinking the next step. It's never right now. If you're thinking about right now, you're late. You've already missed the opportunity to correct whatever the next thing is going to be.
This is actually a really good segue into a great question from Travis. Can you take a minute or two to properly explain the job description of a digitech, including expected skill sets, on-set tasks, etc.?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a good question. Thank you. It's so hard to define sometimes. I get asked it a lot. And I'm like, it's every set's going to be different, but your primary function when you show up as a digital tech, it's not lighting, it's not grip, it's not electric, it's nothing. It's setting up the computer and getting that camera tethered in the photographer's hand. That's your first step. Your second step is managing the media, everything that's coming in. We're not talking about correcting the tones or editing the files and any, no compa. We're talking about naming the files and organizing them. So when you're done at the end of the day and you hand a drive off, and we'll get to that, when you're done at the end of the day and you hand a drive off, it can go anywhere. There's nothing worse than when you give somebody a drive and they call you the next day and you go, I can't access this, I can't find any of the files. I make everything so, to me, I'd rather have 30 folders because it's easier to collapse backwards than it is to rebuild. So I always put, if say I export shot 2, I have JPEG FPO folder, I have TIFF folder, and then a client doesn't want TIFFs, I delete the TIFFs. Because if not, at the end of the day, you got to sit there and export. But back to the question. Sorry, I tangent.
No, it's good. It's great.
Organization is a huge thing. And the one thing I can suggest, depending on what software you use, I personally use quite a few depending on the job. With majority of our work, we use Capture One. I have pre-built Capture One sessions. Every job gets a session. So your first folder is your job session. And then inside there goes the capture session. And then in capture, you have shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 4. Pre-build all those folders. And then use the naming token conventions to change all that and to expedite things. So when you export, you're already exporting the folder name that you pre-built. Save a Dropbox or something like that. That's always the easiest thing. So when you get on a job, you can just drag it over. Organization is key. Getting the client the files and making sure the photographer is protected is my job. So if I can't understand what's going on, how am I going to assume somebody else is? Most of the clients that are getting these files, they're working on either like a Dell Windows XP unit or something. They don't have Capture One, they don't have Lightroom, they don't have Bridge, they don't have the tools we have. They need to be so dummy proof that they can just take it, look at it on their phone and zip it off the bill and accounting and then sue over and HR gets it, whatever it is. You want to make it as easy as possible. And that's how you make a living doing this. The easier you make everybody else's day, the better off you are, because that's the importance of you being there. When you show up, you set up the camera. Your job, you're basically the camera. The photographer hands you a camera, make sure it's charged. You got 4 batteries? Plug all 4 batteries in. Don't take anybody's advice. Oh, I charged the batteries last night. I don't care what you said. I'm checking them. I bring my own chargers just to make sure. I bring my own batteries. I bring my own cables. I've worked with people in the past where they'll hand you their computer and go, here you go, tech with my computer. You open up their iTunes and 30 other things are running. Their hard drive has 12 megabytes left on it. And it's coming prepared is the best thing you can do. Bringing your own gear, regardless if you're getting rental or not in the beginning. We can always touch on rates and all that stuff at some point, but worry about the money later. Get good at your job. Learn the job. Learn the skills. Elevate the skills. Bring something new to the table. Talk to the photographer. Find out what they like doing. To talk to them. Say, hey, how do you like to work? Do you like to be tethered? Do you want to see the screen? Do you want the model to see the screen? Do you want other? Asking the photographer or the client or whoever it is that's hired you what their expectations is always. I have a survey I send out. What camera? What are the file expectations for end of the day? How many drives? Is client providing drives? Just all the things that we've gone through that at the end of the day, you go, man, I wish I would have asked that in the beginning. I write it down, my next job, now it's part of the process. And that's something I can make public at one point. I'll put together and I'll send that out. A friend of mine did the same thing. It's one of those things, there's a lot of things out there. When you go to rent a car, they ask you a bunch of questions. If you go rent this, so why do we just give cameras and computers to people? I show up and I give a $30,000 rig to somebody. Let's ask them what they're doing with it.
But we got an official request for that list. So I guess we'll send that out with a follow-up email.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'll work on that today. That's awesome.
All right.
That's helped me immensely. But it's staying tethered and keeping the photographer, once you're tethered and you're shooting, it's checking focus. It's making sure exposure. If you're shooting packs, making sure the packs are going off, because sometimes you don't have attentive assistants. You might not always have 4 assistants on set, a grip truck. It might be you and the photographer. That happens too. Like, a tech can also be a first assistant. And to me, I started as an assistant. I grew. I climbed the ladder and I got to tech and I was like, this is where I want to be. I love this. This is great. It's like OCD, ADD, and toys all the time. It's great.
It's constant experimentation.
So, yeah. It's problem solving all the time. Sometimes we do it to ourselves. I know a couple buddies, once in a while we mess up, but we do it, just to keep ourselves sharp too.
Yeah. MG is asking, do you leave your laptop always plugged in? Some techs have told me to do this.
So my laptops, when they're in cold storage, they're powered down. Yeah, typically they're always plugged in. There's very few times where I will go off battery just because to get back to 100, you're never going to get there as quick as you got away from there. The minute you hit 96, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
Unless you shut that computer and you walk away for 10 minutes, if you're shooting tethered and you're starting to go, you're going to watch that 96, that 95, that 94. And then what happens too is the draw on these gets harder.
Yes.
So these are pulling more energy. These aren't pulling the 15 watts to stay charged. Now they're pulling 86 watts. That's another thing we should touch on with power too. When your laptop's charged, it pulls less power to maintain a charge than it does to actually charge. A 60-inch MacBook Pro right now takes 97 watts of power to charge. This is 150. Do the math.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of life. And you can't carry more than, if you fly, especially. This is like you get one of these now.
Yeah.
That's it. One. I got
like
6
100
right
watt,
here.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna give away my trade secrets of what I do where it says how many watt hours is on it. I don't cross it off. Why would I do
that? Do you get tasked with providing retouching notes for posts?
Yes, 100%. We do it. I do it a little differently. I have an old school method. I pull a screenshot and I do it in Photoshop. You can do it in Capture One with annotations or another software. I like doing it in Photoshop with a pulled screenshot. One, because you have the file number, you have the original image, and two, you can actually just do it right there and then. And if say there needs to be a comp asset from another photo, well, you can put that screenshot on the other screenshot and reference it right then and there. Instead of sending just a screenshot and saying, oh, reference this other one, you have one master plan that says, hey, swap the eye from this one, the ear from this one, and all your assets are still there too with the file numbers, so you can trace back.
What is your virtual Zoom setup for shooting remotely for the current times we are in? That's a loaded question.
Oh man, there's not one solid system. There's not. It depends on the location. Am I on a hotspot or am I on corporate Wi-Fi? And are we shooting quickly or are we there for a long day? To get the image to Zoom, I use a second system, and that's part of my kit. I'm not going to use my main system that's there to use capture. That's there to make sure the images are made. I'm not a Zoom technician. I'm a digital tech. That's my priority. Zooming is now a secondary thing that we're offering, just like, multiple monitors on set. That's not our job. That's something we bring to the table. I have an assistant now that we've trained to, I have done this before in larger productions, have an assistant second tech for when things do go wrong. Because, right now I'm zooming from the XT3. We get about an hour and 20 minutes to a battery.
Yeah.
Well, I can't go, I can't stay on top of the 3 cameras we're zooming the whole set with. I can't stay on top of the laptop running it. What if the camera drops and then Zoom drops? Now I have to go help, technically advise somebody in Chicago who's, on an iPad in their living room trying to get into the shoot. It's overextension in some aspects.
Yeah, there's only so much one person can do.
Exactly. So, my virtual setup, my small footprint one would be a secondary laptop that I would have on my cart or on second, tray next to me, so I can always have an eye on it. Yeah. If it's a large production, I would host it. I would provide the gear, but I'm not going to manage it.
Let's go over some of the power solutions that are available from Tether tools.
Okay. Well, right now, the camera, this is pretty cool. And thank you to Manny. I should really thank you for pointing out that the XT3 runs off of USB-C power. I did not know that. That's a digital tech faux pas right there. Currently, I have the XT3 being powered from the 26,000 battery. That is, let me see, I think I have a slide of that guy. That is the little battery pack it has 2 USBs and then 1 USB-C. That thing's great. You can run a computer off of it. A 15-inch MacBook Pro can run off of it, or a camera can run off of it. You can use it to charge phones or whatever else. And it's 26,000 milliamps. So that roughly, that's going to give you about an hour and a half of solid tethering, give or take. If you're outside and it's hot out, your battery's going to drain quicker because you're running back. There's a lot of power management that, outside just the amount of power. The second, I'm sorry, guys.
People want to see the slides in the chat.
People want to see the slides. Oh, I'm so sorry. Here they come. I have all the product here. They're so much cooler in person. So like right here on this slide, that's a perfect example. That's my GFX. That's the 15-inch. No, I'm sorry. That's a 16-inch. The new 16-inch on a rollaway stand. That's completely powered 100%. We can go anywhere, anytime and shoot with that system. That's using the USB-C puck. This is a new product Tether Tools came out with not too long ago. This thing's rad. It's a D-tap to USB-C, and it has USB-C and USB-A on it, so you can charge your phones and other stuff as well. But for me, I was running off the 16-inch MacBook. And what's nice is that little kit, that fits in a backpack, and I walk in with a backpack and a stand. And that's it. I don't have to worry about anything else. There's no carts. There's no, if I have steps or anything like that, you're good. That would run, that ran that kit for about 2.5 hours. And that was a light session. I'm not going to, say it was a heavy shooting session. It was a portrait session where we shot maybe a couple hundred photos. So it wasn't, but on the other side of that picture, there's an air display about 20 feet over. So we're using the built-in Apple TV air display option too to host the second monitor, that for the client view. And that's actually being powered by a D-tap battery too, but I don't have a photo of that. So I mean, the opportunities, you can see it in that photo there to the left of the client above the photographer. What's neat about the options now, especially the D-tap adapter up in the top right there with the DC adapter, that you can run anything. I have days where we'll be on location. I have 3 monitors out on set. With an Apple TV and an LED, one of these, dude, I'm good. That's all day. This right here. Oh, you can't see. I keep forgetting I'm screen sharing. So what they make for that the DC adapter is this really rad VESA lock. You can see it underneath the laptop in the center image. It's pretty cool because what it does is it actually, you don't have to worry about D-tap because it makes it a V-lock. But what's rad about that is any V-lock battery. Yes. So if you're on a TV commercial, there are piles of them. Go over to your electric or go over to your AC and say, hey, can I borrow some batteries? Most of the time, they're going to have some extras. You know how you win points? Take their charger, put it on your cart, and manage their battery charging. And then, you're giving and getting at the same time. Make yourself as useful as you can if you're going to take from people. But yeah, I mean, the stuff you can do with this now, between the D-tap and that little battery pack, I can take a bag full of them and a laptop and shoot for an entire day and not even be concerned. We charge camera batteries with them now. I ran a GoPro the other day for almost 6 hours off of the USB-C power pack.
Great question, because you already mentioned the Apple TV. You want your best solution for a wireless monitor?
Best solution. How much money you got? I would tell you every day of the week, there is hands down nothing better than a Tejeda. A Tejeda is the price of, I don't know, a pterodactyl. Those things are so expensive.
Between $500 to $3,000 sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a Bolt 500 kit for about $900, and that's a really good starter kit because you get about 100 feet, 200 feet if you're lucky, if there's not a lot of signal noise. Or you can do the video system. Tejeda we steal that from motion, from film, from movie, movie shows, movie sets. They use Tejeda to beam the camera back to Video Village. So I just took that notion and said, okay, how do we make that work? The Tejeda is going to be the best system, and you can rent them anywhere. That's what's nice. Places like Foto and all over the country, you can just call and say, hey, I need a Tejeda Ace 500 or a Bolt 5, whatever you need, and you can rent them. You don't have to purchase them. And they run off a battery. They have their own battery system, so you don't have to worry about plugs. Other than that, my secondary is a system made by jpeg. It's cost effective. It's really inexpensive. You can get it on Amazon, and the range for what it does is insane. They have 2 different versions of the wireless. There's a 4K and a 1080. The 1080 transmitter to the 4K receiver, I've had in hospitals where we'll be shooting in an operating room and I'll have a client monitor about 7 or 8 doors down. Now in a hospital, 7 or 8 doors, there's a lot of wireless networking. that's happening there, no issues. And but you know, to go to the Apple TV, there's a huge place for an Apple TV as a display. If you're in somewhere and you're using their internet, and I'll tell you why. If you're on the second floor and you're on the same network as someone on the fourth floor, that monitor can be on the fourth floor. So you can be rolling around, not worrying about anything. As long as you're powered and that monitor's powered and you're on the same Wi-Fi network, it's airplaying through the Wi-Fi. You're not hosting a Wi-Fi signal. You're not really even hosting a secondary monitor. It uses the least amount of GPU out of anything. Now, resolution-wise, I don't do them bigger than a 24-inch. 27, you start getting into, you know, latency issues, and you start getting into, people get real close to 27 inches. And if there's a little handshake or a little softness on a wireless display, that gets usually misconstrued for an out of focus picture.
Yeah. So speaking of wireless solutions, I think that's a good segue into the Air Direct.
Let's party. I love this thing. Let me get this slide up for you. So the Air Direct is rad. There's a couple reasons, and I'm, you know, I'm a nerd. I love anything that pushes the envelope and changes things and gives us an option to do things that we couldn't do before. And it's not just, you know, there's a couple, there's drawbacks and there's upsides to everything, right? So the only drawback I have so far would be the speed, right? So we talk about speed with wireless tethering. How fast should it be? Well, there's no benchmarks to say it should be 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It is what it is. So this is the first product to give you that really robust and stable workflow where you don't have to worry about cell phone batteries. You don't have to worry about a hacked D-Link router that has, you know, a bunch of junk in it that, you know, I used to have a lot of problems with a couple of the other ones. This thing's been super stable. You know, the speed thing is one thing, you know, to talk about. Oh, what is it? Oh, I'm sorry. The speed thing isn't as much as a concern as it's taking us back to the film days. When you shot film, it wasn't click, 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 click. You didn't machine gun things. You shot a picture, you thought about it, you composed, you lit it. You didn't throw 1,000 frames and hope you got something. You made a photo. And where we're at now with the speed of tethering, we're back to this machine gun. So the wireless kind of slows you down and makes you think a little bit more. But at the same time, you gain the fact that the computer's there. You can be anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you can be 50 feet away and go click, 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 and they're still coming over. I did a lookbook a couple weeks ago at the beginning of the COVID situation, and we did it with the Air Direct, and it was great. We were outside. We were able to walk around anywhere we wanted on our set. We walk around the building. If you don't lose signal, the speed goes down a little bit when you get a little less signal. As soon as you come back in, especially if you shoot a Canon, it holds it in. It just sucks it right in. You can accelerate the workflow by shooting a JPEG and have it, you know, pair off with a RAW. But majority of the time, you know, I'm shooting a RAW. I don't even want to deal with the JPEG. I don't want to see a JPEG because what happens if the RAW gets messed up and we have this JPEG that's, you know, 0.5 MB and somebody wants to make a billboard? You know, we don't mess with JPEGs. It's not just a, you know, the I shoot RAW thing's not a joke. We only shoot RAW for a reason.
Do you find, you know, you have to switch between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz on the Air Direct?
I've been very fortunate. I've only used it on 5 for the most part. I've used it a couple times where I had issues with 2.4, but 5's been pretty stable. I mean, we did a test in an urban environment with it where the photographer was at one end of the studio and I was upstairs in, you know, it was an open air studio. I'm not gonna say where there's walls between us, but there's set walls and everything else and about 20 other Wi-Fi networks. And we were still getting the images at the same time on the 5 gigs. My favorite thing about it though, and this is crazy, but I do a lot of food shoots and we hang cameras. You see all these food shoots, half you guys watching right now, you shot food. It's straight down. Have you ever done a 30-person meal straight down?
Wow.
That's 15 seats on each side, right? You know where that camera is? You're not shooting on a 14 millimeter. We still want to shoot on a 35 to hold the lines and give you that depth and to give you that feeling. You know, you don't sacrifice the quality for convenience. So we still got the camera up there. If we had an Air Direct wireless live view, get out of here. Are you kidding me? we had live view, but we also had a 60-foot tether cable that kept dropping connection. Then you got to lower the camera, reconfigure the camera, raise it back up. With the Air Direct, and this is no crap. One, the BP511 battery, I'm sorry, yeah, that's how old I am. The BP511 is the original 5D battery. These are LPE6s. Sorry, I dated myself there. Canon changed their battery once in the last 15 years. Now it's the LPE6. These things last forever. But what's rad is you can plug in a USB pack to it, take the battery off, put a new one on, plug the battery pack, unplug the battery pack, and you're still tethered.
So hot swap power.
Hot swap power. That's huge.
Can you show us how it's
Actually
connected? That's a pretty interesting setup you have there.
So what this is this is my baby. It's my GFX 50R. If you ask me, it's the best Leica and Leica never made.
Screen sharing so we can maximize it.
Oh, geez. I stink at the screen share.
There you go.
There we are. Hey! So this is a GFX 50R with 63, which is like a 50 millimeter equivalent. What it is there's an L bracket on there. Now the GFX is probably one of the least thought out tethering situation cameras made. It is directly under your palm.
Yeah.
That is less than ideal. Yeah. But what we can do is with the L bracket, Tether Tools makes this really rad little Arca Swiss to cold shoe. So you can put it wherever you want. Now, every time I use an Air Direct, it's on an L bracket. There's two reasons. One, I don't want to put it in the shoe. I don't want to occupy the shoe. A pocket wizard's going there, a transmitter's going there, something else is going there. Two, it's when you wear a hat, you can't, you know. So to me, an L bracket's always going to keep you safe. Not just that, you can go right in your tripod with it and everything else. But really, that live view wireless, it's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very little latency, and you know, especially now with everything going on with the zooms and everything, with screen sharing and live view, now we can actually run around the set and show you exactly where the camera's pointed. Not say, okay, how's this look, and go over and take a shot. Like, no, I can show you with live view and then go, okay, we go up, we go down, we go left, we go right. That's going to help a lot of art directors and art buyers and creative directors out there. They're stuck at home and trying to work. And it's going to help that photographer not get frustrated. It gives them that option of, hey, I don't have to think without you. I can think with you. We can get back to collaborating. And collaborating, you know, in advertising especially, is huge. You know, it's depending on, yeah, it's you know, some photographers collaborate less than others, but nowadays, you know, I don't see it as often.
Does wireless live view work on an iPad? And if so, what camera brands are currently compatible?
So I'm gonna resort to Josh and Liz as far as the iPad. I know it works with Canon and Nikon. Yeah. It does not work with Fuji or Sony. I'm completely honest. I haven't used the iPad app yet because I shoot Fuji. Yeah. When we shoot anything else, we're in a studio typically, and you know, I got a 5DSR, so I have it on my iPads. I play with it. I just haven't used it in real life yet. The reason I have it on my iPads though is in case my computer goes down, you can throw an Air Direct on and just go ahead, go back to shooting. You know, we're good. We still have a preview system. The secondary is, you know, obviously we're not working right now for scouting. To me, we used to use iFi cards. I carry an iPad, me and the art director would walk 5 feet behind the photographer, and it wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. It was better than there's nothing worse than when a photographer shows a client a 2-inch screen that they can barely see. It was always about just, you know, my job is just to make sure the photographer and their client have the best relationship possible. So whatever I can do to enhance that, that would be one of the things. So, you know, if we're out on a scout or we're just, you know, looking at houses or angles outside, you can walk around with the iPad and shoot and not worry about anything. You don't have to have a whole rig. You don't have to have an Aeromaster on a rolling stand with a 16-inch and client monitors. You and the client, you know, you and the photographer, just the photographer and the client, they need to have a private moment where that happens. They don't want to always talk in front of people. You know, you don't always want to talk about some sensitive things. It might be about the relationship with the model. It might be about the propping. It might be about the wardrobe. Giving that privacy, you know, is also an option that should be looked after.
We have a few good questions here. Do you find the Air Direct is as stable as a wired connection?
So that's kind of give or take. How good of a wired connection do you have? I'm sure. Yeah, environmentally, you're going to run into a little bit of concerns. I haven't seen many, but you know, it's not going to be the same as a tethered cable. Not today. Next year, I could see it because I see where this thing could go. See, I see the Air Direct as a platform. I don't see it as a tool. It's a platform for where things can go. It's, you know, the fact that we have latency-free live view proves that this thing is capable of some really crazy stuff once, you know, once all the compatibility and all the stability things get worked out. I haven't had many drops or failed attempts with it. I could really see in the next year or two, you know, depending on which way everybody goes with it, I could see it becoming just as stable.
Perfect. Ooh, there's a few technical questions in here too.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's party.
All right. What do you like to use for an on-location internet connection to your router in order to serve up your client monitors, iPads, monitors, screen share, especially if you have 5+ monitors, to send out the data since you can't always rely on in-house Ethernet at locations?
So there's a couple different solutions for that. When I go to work, my computers do not have internet on. My computers, like this iMac Pro, this, you know, these guys right here, they don't have mail, they don't have photos, they don't have Safari. Well, they have Safari, they have Chrome, they have like basic stuff on it. But the last thing I do is connect the internet. I'm not there to send emails. I'm not there to you know, do that kind of stuff where I need to depend on my internet. I have a phone if I need to do email or anything like that. If the client needs internet, then I pursue it. I have a couple mobile solutions. I can't, honestly, the AT&T hotspot I use, I don't know the exact one right now, but I plug it into a Nighthawk. I believe it's an AC 1600 router, and that gives me pretty robust internet. If I'm sending images to monitors and stuff, my internet may or may not have actual web on it. My Wi-Fi usually will say capture pilot, no web. And what that means is that's only for iPads, that's only for client monitors, that's only for to view images. It's not made for anything else. You get into trouble when you do stuff like that sometimes, because if somebody downloads an app on their phone to look at images and then they go to try to go online, then they can't. I'm not a big internet person. I have a couple friends I rely on for assistance with that, just because the speed of it and how things change. And when you go into different environments, I always do have an Ethernet adapter for every one of my machines and a 30-foot Ethernet, or no, I'm sorry, 20-foot Ethernet cable. It used to be a lot longer. 20-foot Ethernet cable I keep with me at all times, as well as a little Hutu. Hutu makes these little tiny wireless routers. They're great. Another thing you can do is, if you do bring your own router, you can get these little Wi-Fi extenders. People get them in their house from Xfinity all the time. I think they just send them to you. They're like 15 bucks. You can plant them all over the studio. And what you're doing is you're meshing, you're creating a blanket. So you have your hotspot in the middle, and you have one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here. Now you have a huge network just pinging the signal back and forth, creating a much larger scale instead of just one outbound circle.
All right. So Jeff Ross asks, can you talk about what you need to connect 3 or more monitors for AD client?
Okay, so easiest, obviously, hard line. Always a hard line. My favorite thing in the world, I love this thing. It's the stupidest thing ever. It's a Thunderbolt 3 to 2 HDMI port adapter. 1 signal, 2 cables. So right there, boom. That's 2 monitors, 1 signal. What I do is I take that and I HDMI into my Atomos. My Atomos then controls what my client monitor sees. So I don't need to have a client monitor on my cart or anywhere near me. That frees up that option. So right there, you have 1 HDMI that you can plug a 50-foot into and throw to 1 monitor. So you got your 1 client monitor there. Now you have your Atomos with an HDMI out or SDI out. The SDI out's key as well. If you're on a motion set, our monitors don't have SDI. But if you're, using like a Sumo or a Logitech or, I can't remember any of the names right now, but a proper, like a Flanders Scientific or something, they have SDI on them. SDI is amazing. It pulls so little power, so little signal noise. The cables are inexpensive and they go forever. HDMI, you run into issues at 50 feet. So every once in a while I'll run SDI out, but most of the time it'll be HDMI out to another monitor. That right there gives you two. And then I'll throw a second one of those adapters on and I can run two more out. In system preferences with the Mac, you can, do you mind if I do a little screen share with that? And show this, because a lot of people don't actually know you can do this. So you can see this, right? This is your arrangement. So right now, this is my array, right? I got my monitor right there. I got my main monitor, which is this one. And then the monitor I'm actually looking at is another one right here. I have very low resolution set on that, so the text is bigger because I know I'm getting old. What you can do is you take option. I'm sorry. I'm afraid to do this because I don't want to. If you hold control, you can take whatever window and now you can mirror multiple monitors off of one monitor. So if you're using that dual Thunderbolt 3, I'm not going to do it now because it's going to screw everything up. But what that would do is this would mean that would mirror, and then I can actually take this third one and I can mirror that too. You can take up to 4 monitors and make one mirror off of one connection. So now you're taking all that work off the GPU, make that your client monitor, put your viewer on that and mirror it to 4 monitors, 4 HDMI cables, and your GPU is going to thank you.
That's a great tip. Trying to go through all the Q&As. So is there anything else you want to follow up with, or should we start the Q&As?
Let's go in the Q&As. If everybody's having a good time, I mean,
so
it's been great.
George Camper, a good friend of Photocare. So you've been using the Cam Ranger wireless for years. Have you compared the features of the Cam Ranger versus the Air Direct?
So that's a hard question because the Cam Ranger always had more options. You can get into them a little more. You can change a couple things, and the platform was a little more universal. To compare, I haven't done it side by side. I don't have the latest Cam Ranger Pro, the newer one. I didn't buy because the Air Direct came out, and I didn't want to deal with the software glitches. The original Cam Ranger, when it didn't work, it just didn't work. Or if the battery died, or I never really had a lot of success with the original Cam Ranger. We used it more for JPEG sending on Scouts than we did for anything else. So I can't really, I don't want to speak out of turn and say Cam Ranger's not capable.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Is there any documented guidance on providing services and staying organized as a Digitech?
There's not. There should be. You'd think somebody would make one. But there's not. It's like one of those. It's like anything. You learn as you go. In the mid 2000s, late 2000s, if in Philadelphia there was no such thing as a digital tech. I was the first assistant that would help run the laptop until we started working. I started working with some much larger photographers, and I'd go over and I'd be running Lightroom because it was, believe it or not, Capture One didn't always support DSLRs. Mm-hmm. Capture, what was it, Lightroom 1 and 2, we shot tethered, and then I guess it was like 2013 or 12, right? It wasn't that long ago that Capture One started supporting DSLRs. We would just run the computer. Digital teching in motion's always been around. This, a film loader, a tone. They have so many divisions. In stills, we never had the budget to have an extra person just to run a computer because we didn't know it was needed. Now that it's been established, there's no real guide on how to do it. There's just us. There's not a lot of us, but we have a really great community, and that's one of the great things about Instagram. And one of the reasons I love it is because I get to talk to everybody, and we get to bounce ideas off each other, and we get to show each other. You're like, hey man, like the inspiration I get off of looking at some people's stuff, like they'll show me something crazy, and I'll be like, oh my god, I never even thought of that. But my thought might bounce another idea off of them, and I take their idea and I change it into something else. It's a very collaborative network, and I'm an open source. If you ever direct message me, I'll, up until about a year ago, I would give you my phone number and tell you just to text me because I hated direct messages. I didn't realize it was such a huge form of communication. Two, I always forgot. I'm horrible at answering them. So if you text me, I answer you right away if I can.
Thankfully, you can answer DMs via the web now.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, the best thing to do is in your local area, find out who's already working. The worst thing you can do is step on toes, undercut people, and cut your hand off to spite your arm. Just because you got the opportunity doesn't mean you're going to get hired tomorrow. A lot of guys will do that. They'll show up and say, oh, I'm gonna, I'm going to charge the same as Richie. And they, well, you're expected to bring the same as Richie then, you're not, can't show up with an 11-inch MacBook Air with 50% battery and a broken charger and expect to charge a top day rate and rental on your gear. When we started, we didn't charge rental. I still, on days comp stuff. I'll comp stuff just so I can play, just so I can experiment, or just so I can show the value. But the one thing I can say, if you do get into that, one of the greatest things I learned was on your invoice, line item everything. That way, if that job happens again, you know exactly what you provided and you can bring it again, because you're going to be expected, if you comped it the first time, to comp it the second time. Now with that, you bridge your own conversation into, hey, I did this. Do you have any money? But, we all have different business practices, and some people are a little more black and white than me. I'm a little more gray, but, the best thing you can do is just kind of talk to people and see what else is out there. Find your local rental house and ask them. They're going to have a digital tech there now. Every rental house has a digital division. It didn't always used to be that. You didn't go in, there was 10 innovative carts and laptop trays and, ISO monitors all over. I mean, I remember going to Milk and having to go to Scheimflug to get a monitor. And then, we're like, when I bought my first card, I called Manny in a panic, tears coming out. I had to leave for, where was I going? Portugal. Yeah. 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we couldn't get, like, even, so I would just say, reach out, talk to whoever you can. Just follow the hashtag Tether or Die, better when you tether, DigiTech. Use social media, not just for the fame aspect and the brag, use it for the education. That's my favorite part. I learned so much on it. I mean, yeah, I fall into looking at people's, dog pictures more often than not, but to look at, a couple of my buddies and, how they use a cheese plate, go, oh my God, I never even thought of that. Or how they mount something, or, how you use a cable. If you bring a USB cable, how many things can that cable do? It's just, it's such a rad environment and it's career that, there's really no telltale. It's like being a photographer, ACDP. There's no like, this is how to do it. I would just say, invest in a good machine, learn how to back up files efficiently, learn how to name files efficiently, make your own keyboard shortcuts. There's software called Spark, SPARK. Unbelievable. Everything is a shortcut. Really? I have shortcuts for everything. I don't use the pre-made shortcuts that come with stuff. I make my own. If I do Shift Command P, it opens Photoshop. Shift Command L opens Lightroom. Shift Command 1 opens Capture One. Why do I do that? Well, if my computer crashes and I need to get Capture One right open, and there's a spinny ball, or I can't find my mouse, I can just hit my keyboard and boom, it's open. Or while you're in another, and you're a little flustered, this happens constantly. Not to me, I've heard from friends. You get a little flustered on set, oh, you can't find your window. Well, if you have a shortcut to open the program, it just opens. It's there. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Boom. Things like that are super valuable. ChronoSync and Spark. I've made a living off of those two pieces of software. Obviously Capture One, and even, I'm not gonna lie, Smart Shooter, if you're ever in a jam, it's great software for so many purposes. If you don't need to use a lot of GPU, it's great. It's so quick. You just can't edit. You're not going to tone or anything. It's a really good calling program. It's almost like Photo Mechanic for tethering. And if you don't know what Photo Mechanic is, oh my God. I was doing work for Arc'teryx years ago, and I called PhotoCare, and I was tasked with the job of, I called Camera Bits. I was tasked with the job of getting the original file name from files from the early 2000s at JPEGs. They wrote me a code. He wrote me a code. I literally was getting pictures that were renamed, and they were small JPEGs and exported 1,000 times off Arc'teryx's server. And I'd run this code, and I'd go in, I'd Apple I, and boom, original raw file and original capture metadata. Crazy town. Yeah. So there's software out there that's not going to be as bells and whistles as a Lightroom. Yeah. But
that's all great info and good advice. So I have a bunch of more Q&A questions. Do you lose any functionality going with AirDirect versus a long cable?
No. I mean, so basically ADU software spoofs a USB connection. So, I mean, to the point where if you run Ecamm, you can use the AirDirect as a wireless, zoom camera. It's basically just spoofing the USB connection through internet. Josh probably can answer that because he's the magician behind however the hell he got that to work, but beautifully done. Because I mean, you know, one of the coolest things about it is the governor in it and the buffer isn't bad. Like, you don't hit the buffer as often as you do. So, you know, it's because the speed you do, but functionality wise, aside from quantity of captures and speed of capture rate, no, 100% is, you know, the same exact. Where, you know, if I open capture up right now and I connect this, camera can be here. I can use my capture one window to change all my settings, open live view, whatever I need to do. And even focus, you know, I use manual focus a lot when we're in live view. I'll go in the, you know, and I do the stepping by hand. Works fine. It's great.
Just to piggy off of that, just so that everyone knows, it does generate its own Wi-Fi signal, but you can actually bridge it with your local Wi-Fi network. That way you don't lose, you know, internet connectivity.
Huge bonus. You know, that was the way we got around that for the first couple months, was either you're Etherneted or one of those access points. If you carry one of those little access points, what you would do is you would join the house Wi-Fi and then Ethernet into the computer. And that way you could steal the Wi-Fi and still have internet.
Awesome. Pros and cons of using smaller power supplies versus a larger Goal Zero, for example.
I'm not a fan of Goal Zero. They are beautiful. When I worked with Jimmy, we would carry tons of them. But we were also in the Tetons, we were in Patagonia, we were in places where you need a battery that does a couple things. They're made so well. The engineering, I hate to say, is so beautiful, but I don't find the value to cost. Yeah. The amount of power they give you for the cost, it's almost like buying a Tesla for, you know, for, I don't even have a reference. It's that crazy. Like, you know, they're great batteries. They don't last that long. But with that said, if you're using it to charge your computers overnight in a camp, they're great. If you're using it to run a tethered session, we've had problems. You know, you know, now probably not as many. Before, we would have to splice cables because the MacBook Pro cable with the DTAT or the cigarette lighter didn't exist. So you'd have to make that, and then you'd have to use this other adapter from Goal Zero. I haven't used a Yeti in a while. I think I still have a couple 150s somewhere. I use a couple other batteries, not just the on-site Tether tool stuff. You know, I used quite a few different battery packs and generators. A Honda 2000 is the greatest tool in the world. You can run an entire job off of it and it's silent. You know, I wouldn't plug up 10A into it. Obviously you can't. You can if you want to blow your router, your generator up, but you know,
I got a few technical questions actually from a few people like Josh and Brian. Are you using Capture Pilot over the web on different networks, like creating a secure tunnel?
Yes. Yeah, so that old hack still rings true, where you take Capture Web and you spoof it through a DNS, and it's good enough. There's other solutions. I've written my old solution, and when that's not stable, or there's any issues, because if you misdirect one thing, it's a pain in the head. But it's the easiest thing ever, because you just send out a link, and then you can be off the network you're on. I used to do RAW plus JPEG. And then I wrote an automation to pull the JPEGs out of the capture folder, put them directly into a Dropbox that would auto refresh. Oh. We did that because then you could be on any device. You didn't have to necessarily have really robust internet, and you didn't have to troubleshoot Internet Explorer as often. Internet Explorer made, you know, the Dropbox thing has always been super easy, and we still use that. We use that for quick stuff on set. You know, there's other solutions other than Dropbox, but that was always my backup to pushing Capture One through the back door to the web.
Sweet. That's a great answer. Any tips on communicating to the photographer issues like focus down on the down low when you have client and AD right over your shoulder?
Oh yeah. Oh man. Oh, I've been in the most awkward of situations. So awkward. I mean, you know, especially with some of the pharmaceutical jobs. Oh boy. Or fashion. Oh man. Thank God people are way more PC nowadays, but yeah, you know, there's the aggressive way, check focus, you know, that kind of crap where you're yelling back and forth. That's the most common, I think. Depending on who I'm with, you know, me and Ben used to have a great system. You know, we had nicknames for things. I would just call for something and say, hey man, how's your daughter doing? And that meant one thing. Or, you know, we come up with ways to not make the obvious sometimes. That always worked out pretty well. Another way is, you know, we this is horrible. We used to have a great solution to stopping photographers from cashing their last check, we'll say. We'd pull the tether cable. I had a client teach me that. He'd be like, no, I'm just not happy. You pull the tether cable. And, you know, the first time he did, I was like, what? Because, you know, now it's an easy solution. Back then it was impossible, you know, especially if you're on a phase or something, you know, to reset everything. Usually we talk beforehand, and I'll ask the photographer, I'll say, hey, how hands-on do you want me? How involved with the client do you want me? Because we have the client or the AD, like you said, right next to us, and they're always giving us notes. Even if you didn't work for the photographer ever before, they're still like, hey, you know, and you got to go over and sometimes give really awkward notes. I would say just come up with a dialogue prior to being on set with the photographer and your initial conversations. Say, hey, listen, like, do you want your client to see this? How involved do you want me? How involved do you want the client? If the client has a question, do you want them to come over to you, or do you want me to bring it to you? Or do you want one of your assistants? Some guys like it when an assistant comes over, or a PA. Every once in a while, you know, I'll call a PA over or an assistant. I'll say, hey, can you just kind of finesse this or something, just to keep me at my station, but to get the message across.
I think that's pretty awesome. Do you use AirParrot or anything to connect to multiple Apple TVs at once?
Oh gosh, it's not AirParrot. I can't remember the name of it. Air Display X, I think it's called. But yes, I do use something similar to AirParrot, but I use it so I can control the resolutions I put out. Mainly because a couple of the Wi-Fi transmitters I use broadcasting, was it like CMYK and this really weird color. So I would have to spoof them and control the resolution that way, because it would just put out a dummy 4K signal. So you can downscale to 2560, 1440 to keep, you know, things consistent.
Do you use checksum verification software?
I do. I use ChronoSync, and during shoots, trial sync with archive replaced items, and never delete. No deleting. I don't delete shit. Nothing. Part of my language. 0 deletions. Trash folder has a hidden trash folder in it. Learn that. Do not delete stuff. You make one wrong move. Oh boy. But yeah, there's a couple different solutions for that.
All right. Is there a resource that helps with the capture pilot via web? And we're running out of time. It's already 4:12.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I saw that.
So
there is, I can send you that article and you can put that in the post wrap. I have an old article that I use as a reference from a third party.
Yeah.
That still holds true. You need to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
But maybe one day next week I can sit down and write up a guide on it.
And for the last question of the day from Travis, what are your essential kit items that you never go to a set without?
Oh man. Well, geez. A Leatherman, always a Leatherman. If you show up without a Leatherman, you should get back in your car, go to Home Depot and buy at least a Gerber, and then come back to work, because you're always going to need pliers or a knife. Please don't come to work without a Gerber or some kind of tool set. My personal tool set, I always have a knife. I always have my Leatherman. I always have a Robo Cup. I always have, obviously, some tether cables. I always have a Fuji X100, depending on what model it is. There's always one within arm's reach. I'm going to take a wander in a minute with that. Another broken one. An extra computer, but you know, no matter what, I always have a second computer. No, it doesn't matter. iMac, there'll be a second one. There's 2 Tembas. If it's a laptop, there's 3. Backups of everything, always. Hard drives. I use Lacey hard drives. I love them to death, but I carry multiple on me. I keep jobs for years, and there's reasons. I've gotten callbacks for we can't find a file, or I've been on jobs where they want to do the same thing they did previous. That's always been super helpful. So I always carry a drive with me with all the previous 6 months work that I've been on with me. Other than that, field notes and Sharpies, always good. And spike tape. Always need spike tape, gaff tape, any kind of tape like that. That way you can mark stuff, you can wrap stuff, you can, you know, safety.
All right. I think that wraps it up. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Like amazing questions. Most people besides PhotoCare customers wouldn't ask this. Rich, great. That was a great presentation. Thank you for so much knowledge.
Thanks, man.
Liz and Josh from Tether Tools, thank you for helping us on the Q&A. that was a little intense. You guys did amazing. So to close this out, this Thursday, the 28th, we have a treat for you. Celebrity photographer Mark Mann will be joining us as the first guest in our new Conversation with Artists series. This will start at 5 p.m. and will be free via Zoom. Please sign up at Photocare's event page that is linked in this chat, which I'll be sending you right now. All right. Oh,
I don't 3D print them. Somebody in the comments is like, does he 3D print them? It's the only thing I don't 3D print.
All right.
Manny sells them, so buy them.
Yes, yes we do. In terms of sales, so the store is still closed for obvious reasons. We're still figuring this out as well. If you go to sales@photocare.com, we will figure it out for you. If you have any technical questions, any support questions, support@photocare.com. All right. So everyone, thank you so much. Thank you, Tether Tools. Thank you, my crew at Photocare. And thank you, Richie. Have a good one.
Thank you guys.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.